Now on 4, writer Kevin Toulis investigates the brutal murders of gay men. From the outset, the programme contains reconstructions of extreme violence, which you may find distressing.
On the night of November 13th, 1995, 3 young men entered Central Park in Plymouth on a hunting expedition. Armed with knives, their fists and boots, the men were hunting queers. The first man the 3 youths encountered in the dark that night was Mr. Hawken, a total stranger who they beat senseless. The men pulled Hawken's trousers down and then repeatedly slashed his genitals. The second man they attacked was Frederick Sweet, the 64-year-old retired widower. I'm Kevin Toulis, and this is a film about the murder and killing of gay men in our society. It's a story of blind hatred and prejudice, a hatred so ingrained in our culture that 3 18-year-old youths could kill a perfect stranger, Terry Sweet, beat another man, Bernard Hawken, within inches of his life, and still somehow feel they were acting in society's name, acting in our name. Terry Sweet's body was found in front of this park shelter. First there were flowers, but soon after vandals desecrated this killing ground. No queers here. There was one eyewitness who stumbled upon the killers as they were attacking Mr. Sweet.
What's your gun? Leave it out, go! Sam, what's that to you? Hey! Get out and go on!
That eyewitness managed to escape from the park and call the police, but he's still in fear for his life, still in fear of the friends of the men who hunt queers in the parks of Plymouth.
What did you see in the shelter?
3 youths kicking someone violently.
Was the man crying out for help?
No. I don't think he could speak. And then they left him and started on me.
What did they shout at you when they were circling you?
There was just one that was shouting, fuck faggot, queer bastard, or I'm gonna kill you. That was all he said. Just kept on repeating it over and over again.
Did you think they would kill you if they had the chance?
I think so. I think if they got me on the ground, they'd have done exactly the same to me that they'd done to the other 2 people.
Well, this is where Mr. Sweet was found. Just on the front of the shelter, there was an apron of paving slabs, and he was found here. He died of multiple injuries. That's what the pathologist said. He sustained crushing injuries to the skull, crushing injuries to the groin, and he could have died of either of those 2 types of injuries.
Terry Sweet lived with his lover of 10 years, Albert Priol.
What did you do together as a couple? What kind of things would you do?
Same as any other couple. We went on holidays together. We walked together. We walked our dogs together. We went out for a drink together. We catch buses, and we went up to Scotland, up to Glasgow. Went up to a wedding, my niece's wedding. He was part of our family. My 2 sons went with me. They took me out there. And I went in and I saw him. His face was beaten. I mean, I could see it was Terry.
You could recognise Terry?
Of course I could. I bent over and kissed him. Why shouldn't I? It was mine.
The other victim, Bernard Hawken, was a single man in his mid-50s. What's Bernard like now?
He can't walk. His legs is crippled up because of the brain damage. And his right arm is paralysed. It doesn't move at all. You can't straighten it or anything at all. Like, it's just finished. And his memory is rubbish. He can remember, I would say, about 2 minutes. And that's it. What you've just told him, he's forgotten. He don't remember anything.
How do you see the future for Bernard and for your family?
For Bernard, as it is now, there is no room for improvement. None at all.
The three accused, Richard Bonus, 18, Stuart Smith, 19, and Roberto Pace, 18, went on trial for murder in 1997. All three said they had taken a combination of alcohol, temazepam, Valium tablets, and butane gas. All of them admitted punching and kicking Terry Sweet and Bernard Hawken. Pace admitted slashing the genitals of both men. Pace claimed that 64-year-old Terry had provoked him by grabbing his collar in some kind of threatening sexual gesture. Pace tried to blame his victim. But in the end, the youth's defence was simply that they did not intend to kill anyone. They just went a little bit too far. A little bit too far? Terry Sweet's penis was nearly cut off, and his testicles were stomped on and crushed. It was one of the worst sex hate crimes in Britain since the Yorkshire Ripper.
It does seem quite incredible that in a regional city in Britain, people would do this to other people because, for any reason, but yeah, for any reason whatsoever.
Well, it does. It's very, very rare. I've never come across anything as violent as this.
Attacks on gay men in Britain are not rare, they just go unreported. In the aftermath of the Plymouth Park killing, police uncovered evidence of 5 serious assaults against gay men who were too frightened to go to the police for fear of public exposure and further retribution. Nor are queer bashings the handiwork of a few thugs. The Plymouth Park killers were middle class. Bonus is the son of the City Council solicitor, Smith is the son of golf club stewards, and Pace's family own a historic seafront cafe. Pace, Smith and Bonus were convicted of murder and sentenced to life. I still don't understand how 3 teenagers could go out into the local park to kill. They destroyed 2 men's lives for no reason. They've ruined their own lives. Where did such intense hatred come from?
I suspect the major factor was not so much thinking about the people they queer bashed, but thinking about themselves. This was a way of them saying, we're not like that, and asserting amongst their peers, their friends, their mates, that identity of not being the other, of not being queer, of being real men. And it's quite rare, I suspect, for individuals just to go off and queer bash on their own. Obviously there are examples of that. But often queer bashing is a collective thing, and it's often 2 or 3 men doing it together. Large parts of our culture still believe that queers deserve what is meted out to them. And the ultimate reason behind that is that although we're more tolerant than we used to be, more accepting in many ways, we haven't fully accepted the logic of saying there are many types of sexual being, each is as human as the other, and we ought to begin to learn to live properly with that diversity.
Prejudice against homosexuals is not restricted to queer bashing. We grew up in a society where poof and faggot are common insults even on the playground. I said this is a story about the killing of gay men, but it's also a story of the way our society, through the jury system and our homophobic prejudices, let some of the most violent killers in our midst get away with murder. In February 1995, police were called to a flat in Cardiff and found the body of Brian Symes, a 57-year-old ex-Welsh guard. Brian Symes was lying face down on the bed. He'd been strangled. For the purposes of the film, we've had to reconstruct this and other killings. Killing men is a violent, ugly business, and what you will see is disturbing and horrifying. But it's also the truth.
There were clear signs that things had been stolen from Mr. Symes's flat. His wallet was alongside his body on the bed, with no money in it. Various other property was missing, so it was clear to us that this in fact was a murder and a robbery.
After a tip-off, police raided the home of Mark Blannan, a 26-year-old drug abuser. Blannan was charged with Brian Symes's murder.
He denied any involvement at all in the death of Brian Symes. He denied even knowing him or even meeting him or even being to his flat. He was asked then to account for the property found in his flat. He told us he'd bought these items of property 7 days previous to the murder, in fact, at a car boot sale. Now, we could prove this obviously wasn't the case, because forensically we had fibres from a vacuum cleaner, which was recovered from Mr. Blanning's address, actually were from Brian Symes's flat.
Mark Blannan gave a different version of events to his flatmate, John Matheson.
He just told me that night he killed somebody, you know, and he told me how he killed him as well.
How did he do that?
He said that he had a belt around his neck and he strangled him and then broke his neck.
The day after the killing, Blannan returned to the flat to ransack it. Matheson helped him.
Why did you go there?
I don't know. You know, more like I just wanted to see a dead body or something like that, you know what I mean? But I didn't believe him anyway, so I was going there just to see if he was telling the truth to me. And when I did see the deceased, well, I did shit myself, you know.
What did he say to you about the reason for going back to the house?
He wanted to rip him off. He wanted to go through everything in the house and see if anything was worth keeping and selling and whatever else.
When the case came to court, Blannan surprised the prosecution with an entirely different story.
He gave a strange account where he'd been out in the city centre. He didn't know how or where, but he found himself sharing a taxi with Brian Symes, a man, don't forget, who was 57 years old, quite senior to that of Mr. Blanning. He said that Brian Symes had invited him back to his flat for a drink. They were going to have a party, and he went back there. Whilst they were there, Blanning said that Mr. Symes made sexual advances towards him and in fact produced a knife. Blanning said he went up to leave the flat, couldn't leave because the door was locked, that when he returned, Brian ordered him to the bedroom to take his clothes off. As he was doing that, he managed to take the knife off Mr. Symes and in fact took the belt off Mr. Symes's trousers and then strangled him with that belt.
What was he actually alleging then about Mr. Symes?
It was really that he was subject of sexual advances from Brian Symes. He was the innocent party. It was not him at all. It was Brian Symes, the aggressor, sexually.
And do you think the defence barristers exploited homophobia to further the case of the client?
Yes.
You were convicted of burglary. What was your sentence?
3 years.
3 years. And what was Mark's sentence for?
8 years of manslaughter. Breached that life.
The jury believed Blannan's claim about Brian Symes's alleged homosexual advance, but it seems that the judge, Mr. Justice Curtis, did not. Curtis went out of his way to endorse the police version of events. Sentencing Blannan, Curtis said, "You brutally murdered Symes and were without a right to take away the life of this man. Blannan is likely to serve 5 years for the killing and robbery of Brian Symes." Blannan exploited a loophole in the Homicide Act. He got away with murder by claiming provocation.
If I was a defendant and was charged with murder, what's the best legal option open to me?
The best legal option open to you is to try and show that in some way your intention to commit that murder was qualified. Now, an obvious way to do that is by pleading provocation, whereby you're saying, as a reasonable person, I was nevertheless offered such a provocative form of behaviour by the person I killed that I lost control of myself. Therefore, I'm not nearly so culpable for what I did than I would have been had I been fully in control of my actions.
So I'm blaming the victim for my killing them?
You're certainly saying, yes, the victim takes a part of the blame. It was an excusable homicide, if you like.
An excusable homicide? Someone puts their hand on your knee and you kill them?
If I was convicted of murder, how long would I serve as opposed to being convicted of manslaughter?
On average, you would serve at least 13 to 15 years for a murder. For manslaughter, the figure is anything up to 10 years lower. It will obviously depend upon the circumstances and what the judge recommends as a minimum, but there is at least an average of 10 to 12 years difference between the two.
Not surprisingly, claiming your murder victim provoked you into killing them by making a homosexual advance is an attractive option, an option that's increasingly common in our courts. In July 1993, 23-year-old John Auld killed Jimmy Boyle, a shipyard storeman, after Boyle allegedly made a homosexual advance. The two men regularly drank at this East Belfast pigeon fanciers club. Boyle and Auld were casual acquaintances. Boyle had recently been made redundant, and it was common knowledge in the club that he was about to receive thousands of pounds in redundancy money.
What was Jimmy Boyle like as a person?
I would describe him the gentle gent of the pigeon club. That's the type of fellow he was. Warm, sensitive, wouldn't do anybody any harm. So always asking me, you alright? Know what I mean? That type of fella, you know. And all the time I've known Jimmy, I've known him 17 years. And all the time I've known him, I've never known him to argue with anyone in a violent way now. Raking and all, like, never seen him threatening anyone or anything like that sort. Just a gentle gent. That's what he was known as in the pigeon club.
And what did he do?
What did he do? He worked in the shipyard and worked from 8 to 4:30. Come home, this is what his life was like, 4:30, into the house. And as far as I know, he never made himself any dinner. He'd have been 7 o'clock, we used to open the club at 7 o'clock at night. Jimmy would have been here at 7 o'clock at night once the doors was open. He'd have been in, 4 or 5 pints, a couple of games of pool, good laugh with all the fellas. There wasn't that many girls frequent the club then. And home at night again, and into the shipyard the next morning. That was Jimmy's life.
No one can be sure what exactly happened on that July night. There was only one survivor. A survivor who feels remarkably little shame about this brutal killing.
He asked me, did I want to come around for a drink? He says, so I'm trying to his flat and I had a beer and I got up to go to the toilet and he came in behind me and grabbed me by the balls and I just hit him, turned around and hit him, and we ended up in the hall and hit him again. Then we ended up in the living room and just kept hitting him, couldn't stop hitting him. It went on for 5-10 minutes.
In what condition was Mr. Boyle in when police officers arrived at the scene of the killing?
Well, Mr. Boyle was lying dead in the living room of the house. His clothing had been pulled up to chest level, and he had severe injuries to his head, his neck and his chest. and there was extensive blood staining all around the living room of the house.
How did you hit him?
Just punched him and kicked him.
Did he say anything?
No, just sort of lying there. He could have been saying anything, he could have been shouting, or I just didn't hear anything, or all I seen was red, and I just wanted to give him a good doing, like, so to speak.
Was there a lot of blood?
It was covered in blood from head to toe.
Were the injuries that Mr. Boyle sustained consistent with his head actually being stamped on?
Yes, they would have been consistent with not only his head being stamped on, but also his neck and his chest area.
Was his neck broken?
It was, as was his nose, and his mouth split, and various lacerations to his scalp, and broken bones to his chest, ribs.
I wanted to kill him, so I just... He's a dirty old bastard, I just wanted to kill him.
Do you think, was Jimmy a threat to you, did you think?
No, he was harmless. He was just a harmless big man. He didn't really bother anybody.
So why did you kill him?
I didn't mean to kill him. If I had been in the right frame of mind, I would have just had him a dig in the chin, says I'm not in that, Jimmy. But I wasn't, I was drunk, and it just freaked me out. Just, as it says, it was just all the aggression that was in me from being in children's homes and being abused, and I think it just all came out of me there.
Did Auld have any previous history of being involved in criminal offences?
Well, just prior to this, really, it only been a matter of hours prior to it. We know that John Auld did rob an elderly woman in East Belfast and took her handbag from her.
And how did he rob her?
He grabbed her from behind and pulled at the bag. Whenever the old lady fell, she resisted by holding onto her bag, and Auld continued to pull the bag and trailed the lady a short way down the street until she let go of the bag.
What happened when the case came to court?
Well, we were prepared for a trial for murder, but at the last minute, the prosecution accepted a plea to manslaughter. So Mr. Auld was convicted of both the manslaughter of Mr. Boyle and the robbery of the old lady.
Just as the jury was being selected, the prosecution decided to accept a guilty plea to manslaughter from Auld's lawyers. A local woman had complained that Jimmy Boyle had made an inappropriate sexual gesture towards her son some time before. This complaint was never substantiated, but the allegation may have influenced the prosecution into dropping the murder charge. Was Jimmy Boyle's life and the loss of it not worth their precious court time?
And how long was he likely to serve, having got a 4-year sentence?
Well, actually, then would have been 5 years in total, because the 1 year was running consecutively, which meant they only would have served 2.5 years, because at that time there was a 50% remission.
Do you think, in your personal opinion, that that was just, given the violent nature of the killing?
Not that my opinion means anything, but I would think no, it doesn't.
What did you think when you heard that the sentence was 4 years for killing a man?
Killing a man for 4 years, I mean, you even take the murders in Northern Ireland through terrorists. If you kill someone, you get life automatically. So to kill a child, and that's what Jimmy was really, basically, you know, to kill a child and get off for 4 years, I mean, it's totally ridiculous. And that man should be in, as far as I'm concerned, should have done life for that, you know.
Jimmy Boyle's friends at the Pigeon Club are adamant that Jimmy was not homosexual, but would they still be so outraged at his killing if Jimmy was gay?
This community being the way it is, and I'm sure that other communities like this as well, they tend to put homosexuals along with sex offenders, youngsters. So if someone's known to be a homosexual, say, well, get the kids in. I know that's not true. I know that's wrong to do that. But that's a matter of fact. That happens. People tend to do that. And that's why if you're going to be a homosexual, not if you're going to be, you have no choice, of course, but if you're a homosexual, especially in this area, you're going to keep quiet about it.
We don't know any homosexuals, I'm being honest now, in my own community. Now, it's working class community, but I don't know of any, I'm being honest.
Well,
and I don't bear any grudge or anything against homosexuals as in that respect. But what I'm saying is, if we know any homosexuals, which we don't, not coming in this club or not frequenting this club, but...
Were you shocked when obviously Old said that Big Jimmy was, you know, he said he was queer?
Unbelievable.
If he was queer, nobody would cry over him at all.
Oh. Why not? Why not?
Nobody would cry over him. He was never queer.
If somehow Jimmy Boyle had made sexual advances to any person, Jimmy Boyle being Jimmy Boyle, you would just have to push him or say, stop that, Jimmy, or I will hit you, and Jimmy would have stopped it. There's no need.
What did you think would happen to you on the day of the trial?
Well, I thought I was going to get life in jail, and that's all that was in my mind all the time. I was on remand. And right up to the day of the trial, I thought I was going down for life because there was no sign of being dropped to manslaughter or anything else.
What do you think of your sentence eventually? Do you think you should have gone to prison?
I know I had to be punished for it, but in the way I look at it, I was getting punished for what he done to me. He sexually assaulted me, like.
Despite stomping on Jimmy Boyle 36 times, Auld is somehow convinced he is the victim of a gay sexual predator. And Auld is not alone in this view. Even with the extraordinary violence used in these killings, 25% of the killers of gay men succeed in obtaining a manslaughter verdict. The legal system effectively endorses homophobia, the fear and hatred of gays, as an acceptable defense to murder. The script is always the same. The killer is a naive, young, red-blooded man who is amazed to discover his drinking companion was making a sexual advance, and such was his horror and panic at this affront to his masculine dignity that he uncontrollably lashed out. It does not seem to matter how many times you punch and kick or stab and batter. Again and again, juries accept the word of a killer, just so long as the man killed was gay.